Hey guys, Attorney Walter Hnot. So one of the big things I want to go into is essentially how these different individuals, these different groups are playing hot potato with essentially social security benefits. And the big thing that you have to keep in mind is that the Democrats will usually play the part of like the bruised, hero that's sitting in the corner trying to fight for your rights. And the Republicans will usually play the role of like the dean of the school trying to correct the system so that it'll actually work going into the future. And the ironic thing is that when you look at these two groups, the Democrats have tended to be much more Hollywood esque. They've been much more capable of essentially pushing forward overall themes, ideas. They've been much better at shaping kind of the future that they want us to live in visually. Whereas Republicans, it's always going back to the old idea of it worked, we can use this, we can continue with this, etc. Now, with that said, what's going on is that, and I'll read directly from the article, NewYorkPost.com, which obviously leans a particular way, but White House claims GOP pushing Social Security cuts after basically McCarthy rules it out. So what's interesting here is, Karen McDonald, thank you for the $2 donation. I really appreciate it. Very, very cool, very cool. As a side note for you guys, tonight is going to be a huge video, like the Thursday night. So make sure you tune in around 8-ish. I know I'm always a little bit late, but 8-ish when we go live. And then I'm going to do another video where I just answer questions for a while. But tonight's going to be a huge video. We're going to do essentially 3 videos right now because I was supposed to do them last night. But what's interesting about this is that we're seeing a shift in how politicians are viewing Social Security benefits. And the Republicans are starting to listen to Trump when it comes to staying away from the idea of entitlements. I'll read to you directly from the article. Washington, White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre claimed Wednesday that the House Republicans want to slash Social Security and Medicare as they push for spending reduction in exchange for raising the debt limit. Despite, here's the flip, House Speaker Kevin McCarthy repeatedly ruling out such cuts. Jean-Pierre denounced Social Security net changes, which McCarthy already took off the table after being asked about President Biden, saying Tuesday that I have no intention of letting the Republicans wreck our economy, despite his own refusal to negotiate with Republicans. Okay, so a little bit more, then we're going to go into the analysis of it. Bottom line is on Tuesday, Fox Business anchor Larry Kudlow, a former Trump White House economist, asked McCarthy to respond to these little White House weenies, right? They say you're going to cut Social Security, you're going to cut Medicare, and you're going to default on the interest payments on bonds. Remember, we don't want the bonds to do poorly because our Social Security benefits are tied to the bonds, the bond market, rather. None of that is true, McCarthy replied. And that's the bad part here. First, the administration said they won't negotiate and then they want to play politics. Why are they so afraid to sit down and find where you can eliminate waste? On Wednesday morning, Manchin met with McCarthy to discuss the debt ceiling impasse and told reporters afterwards that the Republican leader agreed that Social Security and Medicare cuts shouldn't be a part of the negotiations. Now, here's the deal. Originally, there was a drumming effect by the Democrats to push the identity that essentially, Republicans were surefire going to hold this as the number one contention or issue or whatever when it comes to this whole debt ceiling situation. Nobody knew if that was true because, all these backroom talks, nobody really knows, that's what they do. These politicians have talks in these rooms, and sometimes we get to see them, sometimes we don't. But nobody really knew what the truth was on that. Now, Democrats are better. They're just better when it comes to being able to create a movie out of something. They're just better at it. They're more Hollywood about stuff. Republicans, however, tend to always be on the defensive. You've probably noticed that, Republicans are usually having to answer, being made fun of or poked at or whatever by the Democrats. Now, there's an obvious bias. You can look at the Trump and the Biden thing when it comes to the, secret or highly restricted documents. There's an obvious bias out there. But what's interesting about this is that Democrats were really smart about it. They attacked the one thing that has a massive voter group that life or death, relies on essentially these benefits. And why that's so brilliant is that they recognize the need. More so than a woman's need to feel pretty in the traditional selling of lipstick, selling of clothing, selling of makeup, more so than a man's need to feel triumphant and protective and impressive in features that he brings to his spouse. More so than all of that, the standard of living for most Americans has lowered over the past 20 years to such a low point that now people are less focusing on what can I buy to attract good things, better things. Now people are focused on how do I survive? How do I survive in this future economy? And so the reality here is that, we're coming out of this post COVID thing, but we're going into a recession and we're still going to have inflation and it's not going to be as bad as it was, but it's still going to be bad. The other issue is that we're going to be seeing a lot more car defaults, a lot of people applying for disability benefits, especially from the tech market because of the massive layoffs, which is interesting. That's something that a lot of people need to be talking about more because the industry layoffs in the tech industry, that used to be like the untouchable industry. There used to be so much money available there that laying people off, why would you even consider that? That wouldn't make sense to do that. But now the money isn't there. The economy is doing so poorly that the tech jobs aren't even making as much as they used to. It used to be a cash cow industry. How did all those people afford those $2 million condos in San Francisco and LA? It was a cash cow industry. Now, with that said, the problem here between these two groups is that the Republicans are saying, we're going to follow essentially what Trump was saying, which is that entitlements will not be a part of the discussion. We're pulling them off the table. Now, of course, it comes to question, why were cuts and all these things not as well thought out by the Republicans when originally talking about any of this stuff? But remember, the thing was, this blew up to be what it was, not as a result of the Republicans. It became such a huge story because of the Democrats. They're just better at doing politics. They just are, because they know how to play the hero and they know how to play the victim. They're just better at it. They're just better at it. So when it comes to this stuff, Social Security benefits are taken off the table. But it's probably still going to be trumpeted by the White House. It's probably still going to be trumpeted by other politicians to say, don't you trust those Republicans, right? They'll be saying that, but they'll be saying, don't trust them because the result of them is that they're going to bring this up at some future point, which they might. Now, I want to point out one thing. The Republicans are sitting back and they're making a good argument here. The argument is, why can't we just have a sit down and talk about this stuff? The Democrats are arguing, we can't even talk about it. We're not willing to talk about it. You just have to keep paying it. You have to keep paying it. The average American, because of their knowledge base, their experience, is going to lean more towards the Democrats because they want the Democrats to just keep paying what they're used to. The average person with more experience and more knowledge and more understanding is sitting back going and arguing, even if they are a Democrat, that we need to sit down and address this thing and fix it because we're getting closer and closer to something where we have to take drastic changes. And every year we get closer to meltdown, right? It makes it harder for us to fix it. So what's interesting is that the Democrats are relying on the ignorance of the American public. It's working. It's working really, really well. And so the bottom line is that during the 2020 election cycle, the website of President Biden pre-White House was incredible for changes and updates and modifications to Social Security benefits, including SSI. Amazing. Trump's website, not good at all for it. Not good at all. 2022, the Democrats absolutely hammer during the midterm elections, claims that basically, DeSantis and, basically any Florida politician, that they were going to go ahead and restrict essentially Social Security benefits. That worked. People were reaching out to my firm going, during the 9 to 5, when I represent claims for disability benefits, they were reaching out to the firm saying, is this true? What's going to happen? How do we deal with this? Oh my God. And so the funny thing about it is this: at the end of the day, what we're facing is a game, a hot potato chess game. And the problem I foresee with this whole subject is that at the end of the day, nothing's getting done. If Republicans say we want to talk about fixing problems, the Democrats say you're going to make cuts and hurt a lot of people. The Republicans then become afraid because they want to get reelected. And there's a lot of Republicans receiving retirement benefits and SSDI benefits. A lot of the SSI people are Democrats. It just is what it is. So the bottom line here is that it's not getting fixed because the people who are supposed to fix it are either afraid to lose their job, or they're using those who are not as bright, not as capable of understanding, not as educated, as a tool to basically shift this whole thing to pure destruction. It's just amazing. And I'm told from people who are in politics that this happens all the time. So here's my thing. If we actually want to fix Social Security benefits, they have to all sit down. Who is worse? The Republicans who want to sit down and talk about hard subjects and hard reliefs, or the Democrats who aren't willing to sit down and talk about it and use it as a political tool to basically force the Republicans to constantly take it off the table? You only have about 11 to 13 years before this whole thing really goes into, it's actually a little bit less than that, but until this whole thing for retired people goes into chaos mode, where they're only receiving 80% of the benefits they're supposed to. Like, you take your check and reduce it by 20%. You're looking at that in like 12, 13 years. So the point is this. What do we do? What do we do as Americans? And the only thing that I can think of that I can do in this is basically education. Explaining to people that we have to sit down and figure this thing out. One of the ideas that I think is a great idea, and I have to send it over to this gentleman who leads this nonprofit, he's an amazing guy. He's just an incredible person. But one of the ideas that I had, which is that, look, let the SSI people do part-time jobs or work full-time jobs up to their 4 quarters of coverage with earnings, and then apply the regular rules that apply to them. Then we can we can FICA tax those, and that money will go to the Medicare, SSDI, and retirement benefits, and they will slowly move from SSI over to the actual Social Security trust fund benefits. Great idea. It's so simple. It's so stupidly simple that I can't figure out why we haven't done it yet. So the reality is this. We do not have politicians that essentially are, and this is it. I'll summarize it for you. If the politicians were truly not afraid to do the right thing, this program would have been fixed. Think about it. If they were not all setting themselves up for a career in politics, they wouldn't care about getting fired, right? They'd sit down, they'd make hard choices. They'd let the Republicans would let the Democrats just, bleep all over their day, right? They would, because they'd want to fix it. But they're afraid. The Republicans are afraid. They're afraid to touch it. They're afraid to do it, anything with it. And the Democrats, shame on them. They're creating a situation where no fix is going to occur. So from my perspective, what I think is the first thing that can fix Social Security benefits are term limits. That's it. Make them earn a spot in some other chair, right? Make them swing from governor to senator to House rep. I don't care. Make them earn a different spot. Make them be in a different spot. If they're going to be a politician that does all of that, make them draw the line and connect the dots of all the political positions if we continue to vote them in, right? Term limits. Make them earn their way to the presidency, because that's how it's supposed to work, right? That's the way it's supposed to work. You're not supposed to be a senator for 40 years and then, boop, become a president because everybody knows your name and can vote for that name. Although I will say this, and I think this is important. Every single president that I have seen get elected has had this rock star power going for them. Even Nixon, somebody not loved by a lot of people, talked about that rock star power. Of course, he was comparing it as an analysis against Kennedy. Because, let's call it like this. Kennedy was just cool. He was like in these cool clothes on these cool boats. He was just cool. And people voted and wanted that. Obama had that rock star thing. Obama had a lot of that rock star thing. Same with the president that came before the current president. A lot of rock star. Man, they couldn't get his name out of their mouths. He was on every news show 24/7. Even if he wasn't present, they couldn't get his name out of their mouths. Okay. But the president that we currently have did not have that. And that's the first president I've ever seen that didn't have it, that got, basically put in. And it's interesting. It's an interesting study. Who did have it? Bernie had it. Bernie Sanders had the rock star power. He sure did. All right, so guys, I will catch you a little bit later. Give me about 5 minutes, but that's what's going on right now. There's basically a problem where the Republicans are being used as a political toy by the Democrats. Nothing new there. But the only problem I have with it is that the Democrats are keeping the Republicans from actually having the conversation. And when you get to the point where you can't even have a conversation, it's like a Voldemort syndrome, right? You can't say the name. That's the opposite of what we need. We as a country have a hard time talking about certain things. Uh, Race, we're bad at talking about race. Social security, we're bad about talking about social security. Um, you know, Basically, marijuana, we're bad about talking about marijuana. Point is, we have to address it. Point is, best way to fix that, term limits. Let them know that they only get so much time and then they're out. That way they can actually fix something and actually put their name out there and try and do something big. And the Democrats, for creating this scenario where they put everybody in like ultra fear mode, that like everything's going to be lost. Let me explain where this all goes. If the Democrats keep doing this to the Republicans and the Republicans don't have the spine to go ahead and bring it up and fix it with them, then we will literally end up in a situation where the trust fund will deplete and we will have retired people being homeless. Guys, I'll catch you in the next video, and then I have to do a bunch of phone calls later. Please remember, every Thursday, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard, I go live. So tonight, it's a bigger video. It's a really big video. So I'm really excited about it. And then we also answer questions. You call into the 407-279-1754 number, and we answer your questions. Also, I've been getting a lot of reports that basically the mega big box firms have targeted this channel for advertising. I don't work for Morgan & Morgan. I don't work for Binder & Binder. I don't work for those places, but their advertisement is all over the place on my videos. If you call them and ask to speak with me, like one person did, and essentially they tell you, oh, okay, we'll see if we can link you up with that attorney, and then they link you up with a different attorney, that's because I don't work for them. I own Disability Resolution PA almost 10 years now. I'm not one of their big box firms. I'm like a boutique disability firm where I, specialize and work just disability claims. Guys, I'll catch you a little bit later. Oh, please remember to like, subscribe, and leave 5-star reviews, and we will go from there. 5 minutes, I'll be back. Thanks so much. Bye-bye, guys. Bye-bye.